When I can explain something, I typically don't understand it as well as I could if I cannot explain it. Hi guys, my name is Yetti, and welcome back to Living Life with your favorite nurse. So if you're new to my channel, we're all about health and wellness, lifestyle and beauty, and a little bit of nursing, so don't forget to subscribe and join the family. And if you're one of my returning subscribers, welcome back. To my nursing subscribers, you might have just finished school, written your last final exams, and maybe had your pinning ceremony, and now it's time to think about big bad Nclex. So in today's video, I will give you guys some tips that you guys will need to pass your Nclex successfully. I do have some other Nclex videos, so I will put the cards up throughout this video so that you can watch those videos after you've watched this one. So the Nclex is not an easy thing. I wish it was. You definitely cannot go into it blind. There's a lot that you need to do and there's a lot that you need to know, so I want to help you guys with that today. So if you want to pass your Nclex successfully, keep watching this video. So the first tip that you guys need to know is you need a study plan to prepare for the Nclex. You can't just read something today, read something tomorrow, decide to read something next week and just go like that. It does not work. That will never work for you. What you actually need is a study plan, and I actually believe I still have my study plan, so anyone who is interested in it or wants it, feel free to comment below and let me know and I can email it to you. But you absolutely need to have a study plan, something that will tell you what you're going to study every day, something that will tell you what you need to know by a certain time. So when creating a study plan, you actually need to know your weak spots and you need to know spots that you excel. When it comes to the Nclex, something that people always suggest is you have to study everything. Like, you shouldn't cut anything out, because sometimes you think you might know something and you actually don't. So yes, you do need to study everything, but in regards to knowing your weak spots, some things you might need to study longer. You need to know that you're not going to give the same amount of study time for every single topic. There might be some topics that you were really good in school, or maybe just some recent topics that you kind of still have on the brain that you don't need like 5 days to study. For those things, you might maybe only need 2 days, but for other harder topics or weak spots, you might need, let's say, 4 days or 5 days. So that's why it's really, really important to go over topics, make a study plan, and see everything that you need to study, and see how you want to organize your month or how you want to organize the next couple of weeks of studying, so that you allocate the right amount of time for each topic and each subject. A good study plan also keeps you on track, so that again, you're not studying this today, that tomorrow, this the next week, and it just doesn't make sense. You will definitely miss your way, you will lose your way. It just won't work if you don't have an effective study plan. So honestly, that's one of the biggest tips I would give and say that you actually need to get done before you get to studying, before you start preparing for the Nclex. Another thing that you need to do is have a testing resource that you can use to prepare for the Nclex. I don't think I've heard of anyone that hasn't used a resource to prepare for the Nclex. You absolutely need one. So if there's anyone out there telling you that you don't, that you can do this all on your own, they are absolutely wrong. You don't need to buy the most expensive resources. You don't need 100 resources. You might just need 1 or 2, but you need them. In regards to not having many resources, when I did study for my Nclex in the beginning, I had way too many. I was thinking the more I have, the better chance, I have of passing, and that honestly just gave me too many things to read. It confused me, it just overwhelmed me. So I would suggest having maximum 3 resources. Maybe they do all different things. Near the end of my studying, or really the middle, I had UWorld. I used Kaplan a little bit in the beginning, but really I used UWorld, Saunders, and I had a prioritization book that I had like prioritization questions. So they were all different in their own way. Saunders was, all full of content. UWorld was questions, and then the prioritization book was questions as well, but only prioritization questions. So they were all different in their own ways, and I thought those were like the best things for me to use. But definitely you don't need like 5 resources. You don't need so many different books to read because it's just overwhelming and it's not necessary, and you know, like, they will start eventually repeating themselves, so you don't need that, but you do need a resource. I suggest UWorld just because of how great it is. It's very similar to the Nclex. The questions I find are harder, so if you can get UWorld questions, I feel like you can get the Nclex questions. Saunders is the Bible of nursing. It has everything you need in there. Anything content-wise is in there. So if you're actually trying to study, learn things, refresh, understand things, Saunders is for you, and then UWorld is after testing your knowledge. I'm not really a fan of people just using UWorld and doing questions all the time every single day. I think it's so important to read, understand, make notes, and then go do the questions about the topic that you studied. If you just go do questions here and there, sometimes you don't know things, you miss things, but it's good you actually teach yourself, make sure you understand to an extent, and then go practice. What's the point of like going to practice without actually reading over and kind of studying? It doesn't make too much sense in my opinion. So honestly, my best advice would be definitely get Saunders or a content book, study with that, and then use UWorld or a resource that you have questions to do, and then use that as like your study method. So that kind of segues into my next tip. You don't know what you don't know, so you always need to test your knowledge. You can think that you know everything about the cardiovascular system, but it's when you do questions and you see and you get everything wrong, you're like, oh, I guess I didn't know that. So it's so important that you read, you study, and then you test your knowledge. You know, if you're, let's say, reading about mother-baby, you're going to, let's say, start with how the baby grows, everything the mother needs, just all the information that you need to read, and then you'll go into your testing resource, and then you'll do questions about it. But there's no point doing questions first and just, you know, messing up the questions or not getting them right, and then you're like, oh, it's wrong because of this. Try your best to get all the information that you need and then test your knowledge. So that was something that I did when I was studying. I always read first before I tested my knowledge. I wouldn't just, you know, do questions because I think that's a waste of your time. Another thing that you also need to do to pass your Nclex and prepare for your Nclex is to know how you learn best. That is so important because you could study for the Nclex, let's say in the wrong way, and not retain anything. There are times that I used to study and I knew after I was done I got nothing of what I studied, or I understood nothing because I wasn't studying in the right way. For me, when I just read, I don't retain anything. So I know I'm the person, I have to read and make notes. When I'm writing them down, I'm thinking about what I'm writing, I'm thinking about how it makes sense, how it doesn't make sense, do I get it? And that's one of the best ways that I learn. Another way that I know I learn best is trying to talk to myself and explain like a concept to someone else, because if I can explain it, I most definitely typically understand it. But when I can't explain something, I typically don't understand it as well as I could if I cannot explain it. So you have to know what works best for you. If there was a study method that worked for you in university or even high school, use that study method. There's no reason to fix something that's not broken. If you are planning on using a study method that didn't work in university, I would definitely say change that and look at the different study methods online. Look to see what you know you might like best and what might work for you. You might need to try a couple things before you find something that does work for you, but the most important thing is to find a study method that works for you, because there's no point in studying if you're not going to retain or actually remember what you study. The last tip that you need to know is you actually need to study the Nclex itself. You need to know what type of questions the Nclex is going to ask you. You actually need to understand the criteria, all the different types of format that the Nclex will ask you. So they're going to ask you multiple choice questions when you have to select all that apply. They're going to ask you priority questions. They're going to ask you different questions like that. You need to know how to answer those types of questions. You need to know, all those secret rules with those questions. And one thing when I was using Kaplan, the beginning of their book really helped you learn how to answer those questions, how to look at a question and look at like the answers and see if you can guess like the question before you even read it and things like that. It had really cool tips with how to answer those types of questions. So if you do find like Kaplan for free, I wouldn't say purchase it just for that, but I did really like how the beginning actually kind of helped you learn how to answer all those types of questions. So my point really is you actually need to know what types of questions the Nclex will be asking you so that you can be prepared for that, and that you know you're not going there and you're like totally confused and like you've never seen these formats or types of questions before. So that is one thing you really need to get comfortable with before you take your Nclex. So look for different types of questions online, even if it's not in UWorld. There's so many questions on Google that are Nclex formatted or have the same format as the Nclex. It's definitely important to make sure at least you're 50% comfortable before writing your Nclex. Alright guys, so that was part 1 of basically preparing yourself to write your Nclex, and hopefully you will pass in 75 questions so you can get out of there. Remember to watch my other Nclex videos. If I haven't already put up cards, I will put up an end screen for you to click on so that you can watch now that you're done watching this video. I hope you guys have a blessed week. Definitely look out for part 2 of this video. I will see you guys next time, and keep living life from your favorite nurse.